Okay, boys and girls, since this is kind of what I do, I decide I'll start by just seeing what Sabine has to say about quantum computing and the current state of it.
My
Let's see.
videos about new trends always go badly. I think it's because if something isn't much talked about already, it doesn't seem all that interesting. But it makes me so proud if I can later say, see, I've been talking about this for years. Today's video
Makes
is
sense.
one of those. I want to explain why a currently relatively unknown approach to quantum computing that
Right.
hasn't gotten very far yet might pull ahead very quickly thanks to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and quantum computing are the two currently most exciting technological developments. We've previously discussed how they're competing and how AI is winning so far, but in the past year we've seen another trend that's using AI to make quantum computers work.
Right.
This has recently been applied to an approach called atoms in tweezers with remarkable success. Quantum computing has been heralded as the next industrial revolution and the future of computing, a
Right.
technology that can allegedly do anything from curing cancer to fixing climate change to resurrecting Elvis Presley. I made up the
Nice.
last one, but the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised if that'd be next week's headline. What is true,
Yeah,
though,
quite
is
true.
that quantum computers could vastly speed up the calculations necessary for financial optimizations. That means you could use
Yeah.
them to make money on the stock market. Loads of
Well, my take is that we haven't really hit a financial revolution. So I think with quantum computing, you would enter a whole realm of economics that we can't even imagine. So it would open up this whole potential for problem solvings for problems that we don't even realize are problems. The same way that classical computing did. So putting a desktop and putting a smartphone in everyone's hand and in everyone's desk allowed people to operate and do things that they would never even consider before. So the whole work from home wasn't even an issue without the classical computing revolution of the last half a decade or so. So I think, in my opinion, this whole finance stuff that they sell for improving financial calculations is kind of hard to get money from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. It's hard to get them, to put money down, essentially using greed. But the bottom line is, and it's not something they can really resist, but I think it would make finance redundant because essentially it would really democratize investment banks and large financial firms. So sort of the promise of blockchain to do that hasn't really delivered, but I think it's because it's waiting for a massive computational step up, which I think quantum computing would give. So these are kind of like sales points in order to get people to invest.
of money, and that I think explains a lot of the interest in quantum computing. It's no coincidence that Wells Fargo, Citigroup and HSBC are investing in quantum computing, and Chaim Israel from Bank of America
Right.
enthusiastically proclaimed that quantum computing will be bigger than fire. It's not
Sure, it's something that I start to say now as well, because I've heard people say such ridiculous things in America and it just seems to work. Oh my God, AI is bigger than the wheel, AI is bigger than fire. It's just such nonsense, right? Every paradigm shift is a paradigm shift, and it's always ever going to be a paradigm shift. But because the U.S. economy, it's kind of faltering in terms of its technological innovation. A lot of that, if not most of it, has moved over to China now, which I can discuss in other videos how that happened and why that happened. And it's not because the Chinese screwed us over or did anything. It's essentially because you had bozos like this in charge in the U.S. for too long, essentially outsourcing everything, pretty much everything, to fill their pockets. And then the next generation saw that, they got away with it. So effectively, like our generation, the reason why we're suffering the way that we are and we see weird things going on is because a lot of Americans, especially these so-called, smart Americans in finance and tech, they've never really seen innovation, and they confuse corruption for innovation. So that's kind of what happened in the last few decades, is a lot of confusing corruption for innovation. And that's why you see some people get promoted in certain roles or get, anyway, let's just continue, Sabine.
It's not because he wants to cure cancer or fix climate change. It's because Schrödinger's cat is more interesting when it's made of gold. The trouble with quantum computing is that the current devices are far away from the sizes necessary to do any commercially relevant calculations. And the problem isn't just to make them bigger. The problem is...
it's not just the quantity, it's the quality. So superconducting qubits are what I call, part of my language, inspired by, bitcoins and shitcoins. I call them not qubits, but Q shits. So essentially when a publication comes out that, we made 100 Q shits, it's sort of like, yeah, so what? And if you look 2 weeks ago, China essentially just published a paper where they're like, yeah, okay, so the Google made 150 Q shits, so 300, so they're like, yeah, we can do more than that. So essentially it's weird. It's not real science that's happening in the US right now.
Is to make them bigger while keeping the number of errors down. At least this used to be the case, but artificial intelligence is now getting so good, it's learning to control the errors. One impressive recent example for how to use AI.
Yeah, what AI has done right now is quite impressive. It does a lot more than we expected it to, from what we thought what AI could do a decade ago. But in terms of some of the stuff they're selling you on, it's kind of silly. The whole notion of artificial general intelligence and replacing a real human. There are certain problems, mathematical problems, that have been mathematically proven to be not solvable within the age of the universe by a classical computer. And the human mind, we can solve those problems. And so essentially, there's an indication or a strong proof that this biological goo in our head is able to perform beyond classical computing, which, if you infer, that kind of seems to imply that we're doing some quantum stuff up here. And so, again, without quantum computing, I think you're going to hit a hard wall on AGI. AI right now can't even drive a car. Right? And I would not get into a self-driving car that does not at least have LiDAR. If it's cameras only, no, absolutely not. That's like someone selling you a plane and saying, see, if birds can fly with flapping wings, so this plane has flapping wings. No, I want something that operates significantly better than a bird. So if we drive with our eyes, I want an automated device that does something significantly better than our freaking eyes. So LiDAR, and preferably multimodal. So anyway.
AI for error correction comes from the Google AI group. They've trained their AI on data from the Sycamore chip, so that's superconducting qubits. Then they use the AI for active feedback to reduce the error rate. You see the results of the new algorithm here in the red curves.
Yeah, she's going to talk about this right now, but it's not, come on. Come on.
It's significantly better. They called their system Alpha Qubit and demonstrated that it outperforms all others.
I think significant is the wrong word. So once again, just Google is hyping the crap out of everything by specifically trying to choose words that are so aggressive. Significant is the wrong word. I think experimentally demonstrable, or more accurately, slightly. I think slightly improved is better than significantly improved. So, whenever I see a headline from Google nowadays, I just sort of reverse the words and try to find what the opposite meaning of the word is, in key sort of headlines. So, it's significantly better. Oh, the opposite of significant is slight. It's slightly better. Yeah.
other known algorithms. When I say it's significantly better, I mean it's
Yeah.
a measurable difference, not a large one. But it generalizes better beyond the training set to longer computations than previous methods, which will make it useful for scaling up quantum computers. Personally, I
Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I mean, essentially, it's the same thing where they're just pushing vacuum tubes back in the day and saying like, oh, with vacuum tubes, you got the special vacuum. It's still electronics, and the paradigm shift happened for classical computing when they moved away from vacuum tubes to semiconductors. So a whole new material science was involved. So breakthroughs across the board, but mainly a completely different architecture. And so right now they really want quantum computing to work with superconducting qubits because essentially they can use the same fabs then. So this is this dream, sort of the wet dream that, oh, we can use the same fabs and move quick and blah, blah, blah. But it just, if you kind of look historically, like the history of science, whenever there's a paradigm shifting technology, like going from classical to quantum, that means you got to build whole new factories. It requires a whole new like fundamental shift in your blueprints.
I don't think the superconducting qubits that Google uses will bring us to commercially relevant quantum computers, but another recent development might get us there. It comes from building...
Just to be clear, I do think quantum computing could be around the corner. It's very interesting for me. I just don't think this is how it's going to happen. It's, no.
Quantum computers using an approach called atoms in tweezers or neutral atom arrays.
More like this, so something that's just way out of left field that just seems, like, okay, what are they doing over there? Like, it's that sort of area where I think the real breakthrough is going to happen.
We've talked about this previously because it's one of the fastest developing newcomers in quantum computing. For this, one uses electromagnetic fields to trap atoms in an array and entangle them with lasers in traps that look like this. The good thing about this is that because atoms are small, you can pack many of them closely together, so this approach...
Yeah, so what's really funny is it seems like... me and a lot of my friends, when we were in like undergrad or late high school or even early in grad school, there's stuff that we saw in the labs otherwise where we thought like, yeah, there's no way, I'm definitely not doing this. And then we kind of ended up either doing that or gravitating towards that for some reason or the other. And so the first time I saw a vacuum chamber at Imperial College, I was just like, oh my God, like I'm never doing this. And it just seems like my life is drifting more and more in that direction.
Which could scale very quickly. A recent survey among...
But to kind of give away my thinking, I actually don't think that vacuum is the answer either, because it looks like the universe is able to achieve a lot without vacuum. So if you look at quantum phenomenon within animals, it happens without vacuum. So there are tricks that exist in nature which I think we can exploit.
Quantum computing experts found they rated neutral atoms as the approach which holds the most promise.
Right, so so the company that does neutral atoms asked people, hey, what do you think is most promising? And of course, much in the spirit of a yes prime minister from back in the day, depending on how you ask the questions, you get the answers that you want. So of course, everyone thinks it's going to be neutral atoms, but we really don't know. Superconducting qubit, no, this is no. Photonic qubits, trapped ions. I mean, to put neutral atoms here and trapped ions there, and to say that superconducting qubits has a higher probability than trapped ions, but neutral, it's ridiculous. So trapped ions and neutral atoms, very similar methods, and then others, please specify. I think crystal photonics. I think there's so photonic qubits. I don't know exactly what they mean by that. I wish they were a bit more specific, but I think defects in diamond things like that, I think, are it's so from out of left field, and it's, in my opinion, closer to how nature does it.
For achieving practical applications of quantum computing. Then again, this survey was done by a company which works on neutral atoms, so take this with a pound of salt. One of the issues with neutral atoms is, though, that you need them to fill in the array in an orderly way. In this new paper now, they used AI to learn how to read out
Okay, so let's
an orderly way. In this new paper,
yes, you're going to start to see what. So this is Hefei National Research Center, and it's an all Chinese group. So just to be clear, 20 years ago, in 2005-ish, we used to make fun of publications that came out of China. And some of the emails that we got, even when I was a grad student, were just kind of crazy. It was just like, wow, this is, it's a third world country. And, but even then I saw huge advances, and the scale and speed of advancement in China back then, like this 2005 and 6, was quite phenomenal. We got these beta barium borate crystals, that was so cheap. It was like 10 times cheaper than the ones that were made in the US. And when we tried to price match, the company in the US, the salesperson essentially was super arrogant and super obnoxious, to be honest, and said like, well, you get what you pay for. And it was so cheap, we were like, okay, let's just get a couple from China. We literally lose nothing. And yeah, they were like a little bit noisier, like 10% noisier, even less than that, maybe 5% noisier in terms of the dispersion. But it was so cheap, we just doubled the length of the crystal and got spectacular results. So it more than compensated for the noise, and like still within the single photon regime or the biphoton regime. And so it was just, so back then already, just talking to people, it seemed like a lot of quantum researchers and a lot of people in industry in the US were really delusional about how fast China was changing and what the reality of the future was. And this year, this is just, a few years ago, I spoke about like Hefei, essentially, this 2017-18. Like a few years ago, China essentially, around the beginning of COVID, 2020s, I guess, had started, they had this ambition to create 100 new research facilities, 100 new research universities across China, each of which was the same standard as MIT and Stanford. And I try to talk to people in the US, but it just feels like the US is like a shrinking sort of, it feels like opportunities are shrinking in the US while they're growing in China. And that's, it's a personal selfish reason. It's just I want more opportunities over here. And a lot of the stuff that's been done in industry is more kind of like just desperation and Hail Marys in the US. It feels like to me, than actual, intuition, or it just feels like a lot of pump and dump. So there's a lot of hope that someone's going to make a breakthrough, someone's going to hire that, star engineer, and so everyone's just trying to raise money, so they're at top as the CEO or as a founder, and waiting for a star engineer to come under them while they all soak up the money and funding, so that these talented engineers that are not good salespeople are forced to come under them and then make the breakthroughs. But as you can see from this list, the way that the US has operated so far, a lot of these breakthrough engineers are not going to have names that you could probably pronounce. So I'll just stop that thought right there.
Now, they used AI to learn how to read out the positioning of the atoms and to move them into place, which worked like a charm. In this amazing atom...
Yeah, this is very good. I mean, AI is exceptional at pattern recognition, so that's why it's so good at appearing to sound human and giving cogent answers for short periods of time, is because it's very good at pattern recognition.
tomography image, each dot is an atom. There are more than 2,000 atoms of them in an almost perfect array. Each could act as a qubit. For comparison, the currently largest quantum computer is from IBM, and it has about 1,000 qubits. Let me be clear, though, that they haven't actually done a calculation with these atoms and tweezers yet. But this method has been catching up quickly, and I expect we'll hear more about this soon. This isn't just interesting for practical purposes because it'll make scaling quantum computers easier. I also think this is interesting from a research perspective because it's implicitly testing how random quantum mechanics really is. Physicists currently think that quantum mechanics has this irreducible random element. But what if it hasn't? Then AI might become better at eliminating errors than should be theoretically possible.
So I like this way that Sabine is thinking because it's what I've come around to in the last few years, which is that our understanding of fundamental physics seems flawed and irreconcilable between different parts of physics. So it's not like statistical physics and thermodynamics where as you scale up it transforms from one to the other, and there's no real inconsistencies. It's more like, I mean, everyone's heard this, quantum mechanics and general relativity are completely at odds with each other in terms of how nature works, what the fundamental nature of reality is, and whether space is local or non-local. And from that perspective, so local and non-local essentially means that are they connected or not, or can things happen instantaneously across space, and I guess by extension across time. But so with general relativity, the reason why it works is because of this idea that the entirety of the universe is a fabric, and so if something happens somewhere, it has to travel through that fabric, and so it's local. So, you know, if something happens instantaneously, then you have all of these causal paradoxes, and you can kill your own grandfather, blah, 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 all of that, you know, hyperbolic thinking. Whereas in quantum mechanics, you can create these entangled particles, which are clearly non-local. They appear to collapse, the wave function collapses across space in a instantaneous manner without any contradictions. And the reason why it's non-contradictory is because you can't use that collapse to transfer information. So no, you couldn't really travel back in time to kill your grandfather. But like at the same time, there's a contradiction in terms of what the underlying nature of reality is if you look at general relativity versus quantum mechanics. And it's not a small issue, it's a big issue. And so from that perspective, coming back to the drawing board and saying, hey, you know, is there an underlying physics? Is there more to physics than what we're currently limited to, right? Is there something like well beyond what we currently think? So a lot of physicists have this opinion, or a lot of physicists online especially, and I know why they do it is just you want some authority. Government needs authority. There needs to be authority figures. You want most people to just accept a certain paradigm and then get on with their lives and get on with industry. But at the same time, I think we're entering a different regime of human consciousness. And so like that methodology needs to change to one in which people are more self-managed and you're able to transfer within your head which hat you're wearing. Are you being industrious and okay, this is what we know? Or are you being creative and okay, let's challenge everything? And so from that perspective, there is this sort of overwhelming consensus, to me it seems, in like mainstream academia, which is why I kind of turned away from it, was that we know almost everything and there's only a few things in the universe where we haven't figured out. And for someone like me that's very inquisitive, I found that kind of limiting. And what was kind of ironic for me was that the more well-known institutions that you went to, the less creative the thinking actually was. So anyway, that was my experience. But So I like the way Sabine is thinking right now, because it does seem to me that there's a connection between making a breakthrough in quantum computing and making a breakthrough in fundamental physics. And it's just like in semiconductors, making a breakthrough in our understanding of material science and then being able to use that to create really useful quantum classical machines.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Artificial intelligence is really everywhere these days. If you want to learn more about how neural networks and large
oh, okay, that's it. So just the ads. Anyway, yeah, it was just, I guess, an update from Sabine, and I guess I'll just post that as a reaction video.